when the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah. Sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Just sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time.
Maritime Matters is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime, simply put, relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense
It
Force.
is very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
This is Tuesday, the 25th day of June, 2024. And if it's Tuesday and it's 5:05, you know, they know, I know. It's Maritime Matters. Our topics for the night narrows in on various international maritime matters. In this vein, we shall address the following. The hottest item on the burner. The Houthis attacks continue. We spoke about the Houthis last week. We spoke about the Houthis last month. We spoke about the Houthis last year. And we know who the Houthis are. They are part of the H triangle. When we say the H triangle, we're talking about those, I guess we could refer to them as bad boys in the Middle East. And reportedly, they're all being supported by that country by the name of Iran, that kind of runs things in that area. If it wasn't for the intervention of course, the US, Russia, China, big countries like that, wasn't for the intervention and that area was left alone, Iran would run things. So we got the Houthis, but we got 3H. We got Hamas. As you know, Hamas were the ones that made that attack on Israel that spun into the Israelis responding. And responding in a huge, big way. They just bombed the Gaza Strip to pieces, So the Palestinians have been under duress from the time Hamas made that attack, that big explosion. They kidnapped quite a few people and they ran back home. And, ever since then, the world is now begging them to ease off the bombardment, to allow all those people that are civilians and children and mothers and females and people who can't really defend themselves, some people who have absolutely nothing to do with Hamas, is asking them, look, allow these people to get food, allow these people to get medical attention. And of course, if you've been following the lines, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he don't want to ease up at all. No, he don't want to ease up. As far as he's concerned, they got to learn their lesson, and until they veto the Hamas, which is almost impossible to do, they don't have any plans on stopping. But the rest of the world is pleading, and hopefully very soon, someday, the Israelis would find it in their hearts to stop the bombing, allow groups providing aids to get into the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and wherever else they have the blockade, so that, people can be taken care of after suffering for so long. So the Houthis are part of the 3H. Hamas was the first string of the 3H, and of course Hezbollah. So the 3H, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis. Now the Houthis are the ones that are really wreaking havoc in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden. But the Houthis claim that they made recent attacks on ships docked in the port of Haifa, or docked at the port of Haifa. Where's Haifa? Haifa happened to be the main port of Israel. The main port of Israel, and as far as, the Houthis exist out of the Israelis putting a blockade on the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And the Houthis claim that they exist because they tired of Israeli causing all this suffering to their brothers. Well, Israelis are their brothers too to some extent, but they will make sure that any vessel affiliated with Israel, as far as carrying supplies to Israel and not being allowed to carry supplies to the Palestinians, are going to be attacked. And they were attacking left, right, center, underneath, sideways, you name it. They were making attacks, eh? So the Houthis have been very efficient and very effective in making attacks on ships. But now they took it a step further because they're based in Yemen. Yemen is way countries away from Israel to the south. And they're on the other side of the Suez Canal, whereby ships, and many, many ships, wanting to use the Suez Canal as a shortcut so that they don't have to go all the way around the tip of Africa, all the way around Africa, from one end of Africa all the way around to the south, all the way back up, just to get back to the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea. Eh? They would take a shortcut by using the Gulf of Aden, going and pouring into the Red Sea, which winds into the Suez Canal, which then on the other end pours into the what ocean is that? Is the Mediterranean Sea. So because of the blockade that the Israelis done to the Palestinians, the Houthis decided we're going to attack any ship that has some affiliation with Israel, carrying supplies to Israel or whatever, and they're going to kill. So what the Houthis have done, last week they sink a bulker. They bombed it, and eventually they sink it. The Tutor was the name of the bulk carrier. It was bombed and sunken by the Houthi rebels. After the ship was abandoned, the Houthis paid another visit and actually sank it. So they didn't go on board. They sent a vessel, and they put like mannequins in the vessel to look like people, and they were supposed to be out fishing, but the vessel itself was just rigged with a big bomb, and they drove into the stern of the Tutor, and they made a big blast. They actually exposed the engine room and caused the engine room to flood, and then the whole ship eventually flooded. Right? People had to been evacuated by helicopter from nearby naval military ships, and once they were evacuated, the Houthis went on board and they make sure that the ship sank, and that's their claim to fame. And that's not the first one. I understand that's the second one that they actually sank, but they were attacking ships after ships after ships, eh? So now this week they claim that they are responsible for attacks on 3 ships at the port of Haifa. That's in the heart of Israel. This is the main port of Israel, people. And they are countries away from Yemen, where the Houthis are based. So this is a game changer for sure. And one to keep our eyes on. Now, part of that fight was the USS Dwight Eisenhower. They led the fleet of naval vessels in the Red Sea area. And, well, of course, you know what an aircraft carrier does, eh? An aircraft carrier is like an airport that floats, because it has hangars. The hangars have a lot of different types of airplanes. They got fighter jets and F-16s and helicopters, and so they're loaded with air attacking airplanes. And what they were really doing, they were scoping out Yemen on a 24-hour basis. And any place they would see a missile setup or contraption, or based on their intelligence, where they think the Houthis would set up to launch an attack, because the Houthis, were sending out ballistic missiles. The Houthis were sending out, first of all, drones. And now they're actually sending out small boats, small fishing boats that are rigged with bombs. And those boats are actually drones, because they are electronically guided. They have GPS in them, and they're just like drones, but instead of coming by air, they're coming by water. And that is how serious the Houthis have become. So the USS Dwight Eisenhower and ships from other regions like France and Germany and Denmark, and they were all sending ships in that area to try and stave up, because what the Houthis have done, what they have achieved by attacking these ships, they have achieved an almost blockade to the Suez Canal. And the Suez Canal is the regular route that most ships were taking, coming out of the oil-based region. Is that a caller, producer? Okay, coming out of the oil-based region, the what we call the Persian Gulf. You know, that area where the biggest portion of the world's oil comes from. That's Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Qatar, those really oil wealthy countries. Most of over 60% of the world's oil come from there. And what they do is, once they come out of the Persian Gulf, they either continue south and go around India, or they would come to the west, move north by way of the Gulf of Aden, and then, of course, all around the coast of Yemen until they get into the Red Sea. And that will then eventually converse into what we know as the Suez Canal, which is man-made for the most part. And the Suez Canal, you can go all the way up until you reach that open sea called the Mediterranean Sea. So it's a big shortcut for ships coming from the east to get to the west of Europe, to get to North America, because otherwise a ship will have to go all the way around the south of Africa and then back up. Now from the south of Africa they could go across to countries like Brazil and Argentina, and those with no problem, because that's the route they would take to go there. But anything north of the equator, that's going to be a long run. And it takes them an additional 2 weeks to do that run. So, of course, what the Houthis, as an effect, being successful in doing, is causing most ships, especially container ships oil tankers, ships that really value what they're doing without wanting to take those big risks. Because the military were there to try and stop those ships from being impacted from the shoreline of Yemen or Houthis. And they were not successful at all. Because it's so easy to set up and launch a ballistic missile without being seen before you do that. That while they might have 10 or 20 or 30 helicopters in the air on the lookout at all times, it's kind of like you lose. Because you don't know when I get set up, you don't know where I could be when I set up, and the Houthis are all over Yemen. So they're still able to launch missiles. They're still able to send out drones. And very recently they are being successful in sending out small boats that are basically rigged with big bombs. And that is the reason why most ships have decided that at this particular time, they are not going to make any effort to get to the Suez Canal by way of, even before the Houthis were doing this, they had to be very careful when they move around the Gulf of Aden, because on the opposite side of Yemen, again aligning the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, is Somalia, the country that trains people to be pirates, train their countrymen. Well, the country don't train them, but they got entities training those Somalians to get on board ships and bring those ships in. See, they don't let's go on board a ship and rob it no more, No, piracy had moved to another level. They want to get on the ship so that they could bring the ship into Somalia. And nobody can, they're going to hold a crew hostage on the gunpoint. They're going to hold a cargo until you pay them to release the ship. And so they're making demands for the cargo and the crew. And millions of dollars. One time we go on board, see how much food they could get, how much money they could get from the captain's safe. Those days are gone, people. Those days are gone. Piracy in the Gulf of Aden now has moved to the level where they just won't get charge of your ship so they can take that in and demand millions. So the USS Dwight Eisenhower was there for the past many months, and they were leading the charge to try and put a blanket on the Houthis. And with all the might and power and aircraft and weaponry that an aircraft carrier, some of those frigates and destroyers would have, they were still unable to defuse the attacks of the Houthis from Yemen, from ashore in Yemen. So, in reality, the operation of USS Dwight Eisenhower and its flotillas was really not significant, or should I say insignificant, before Misty call and get on my case. She always think I supposed to talk proper. She forget I only get my BTE. I ain't got much of them things what they got. So the Houthis continue to run rampant, almost unabated. We're also going to talk about the port of Hamburg. And where's the port of Hamburg? Hamburg, lovely port. I remember when I was an officer under training at Dartmouth. We had our seniors. That's Clyde Sawyer and Taylor Bethel and Calvert Johnson and them, those brothers, they went on the Dartmouth training ship one term ahead of us because they were there a term ahead of us, eh? And we met them there. And when they went on DTS, that's the Dartmouth training ship, the Intrepid and the fellas, they went to the Baltics. And one of the port they went to, and this is how I know about Hamburg from the time I was 18 years old, eh? One of the ports they went to was Hamburg. I didn't even know where it was. But I found out later that Hamburg is actually in Germany. And Hamburg is not only a port in Germany. Hamburg is the port in Germany. And of course, when they went to Hamburg, they had a splendid time as young officers. You know what young officers do when they go ashore, eh? They're looking for two things: rum and to see how much young girls around. That's what they do. That's what we did. They're still doing that today, I think. That's what you do in the military when you're under training. So Hamburg is the port in Germany because you can remember Germany is almost landlocked. Germany is only open to the sea at the northern end. The western end, southern end, and eastern end is other countries. And so what the port of Hamburg recently did is they made an arrangement with one of the largest container ship companies in the world, MSC. You know, you got MSC, you got Maersk, you got Evergreen, you got a lot of large container ship operations, eh? But MSC right up there with the rest. She made an agreement that whenever one of her container ships is at the port of Hamburg, they would plug in. Now, what we mean by plug in? You see, usually when a ship is in port, that ship runs its generator. Well, it runs its generator 24/7, eh? And the generators are hooked up by way of, they utilize fossil fuel for the most part. Nowadays, it's starting to shift from fossil fuel to natural gas or LNG. And then eventually they're going to go to things like ammonia and hydrogen and that type of thing, eh? But what the port of Hamburg has done is they utilize the initiative to reduce carbon emissions from ships globally. You see, last week we discussed a similar initiative by the Port of Miami. And a few months back, we discussed a similar initiative by the Port of Seattle, where these ports are providing plug-ins for large ships. In other words, when a ship comes into port to do its trade, whether it's a cruise ship and it comes to do its home porting, or a cargo ship that come to do cargo trading, either offloading cargo and in the case of container ships, they let off some and take on some. Hey, it's like a transshipment port, and Hamburg, being a very strategic port in that area, is extremely busy. So what the Port of Hamburg done with MSC is they said, when your ships come here, we're going to provide them with power for the whole ship. For the entire operations of that ship. Now you got to remember now, these ships generate a lot of power. They utilize a lot of power. That's why they have these big, massive generators, eh? So the Port of Hamburg decided, just like the Port of Miami, just like the Port of Seattle, they're gonna use renewable energy. They're gonna use solar and windmills and all the rest of that to create the energy and have enough to provide the ship whenever she's in port doing a trade, so that she don't have to be putting carbon in the environment. Isn't that a big win-win? The ship wins because they're not polluting or putting more carbon in the environment from a global perspective. They wouldn't have to pay for offsets for the amount of carbon they're putting in there, because when they import, they put zero carbon emissions because they're plugging in. And the energy that they're receiving is coming from ashore, from wind farms and solar. So again, there's no emission of carbon to provide that energy. And we see this today. But in moving forward, most ports in the world will have the provision for a ship coming in to do trade or passenger operations to plug in and shut down all their generators and whatever they utilize for power on board the ship. And the power source would be from renewable energy. How important is that? But will this be a thing for the port of Nassau soon? Well, the port of Nassau provide solar energy enough so that when those cruise ships come in, they can plug in and shut their generators off. We have a lot of sun, a lot of heat energy. We have provision where we can provide loads and loads of solar energy. And the cruise ships will love that. Because you see, the ship itself doesn't have enough space to put enough solar panels out there to provide the power it needs to keep that ship, that cruise ship going. Cruise ship use more power than almost any kind of ship, eh? Because, well, you know, the amount of lights, the amount of power required for people for the kitchen to keep things going. They're always cooking. For people on board to just plug in their phones and TVs, and it's a lot going on cruise ships. So what we're saying is, with the amount of solar energy we can have in this country, we can have far more than enough to provide solar energized power to cruise ships when they come to plug in at Prince George Wharf. And we need to look at that. I don't know if we're looking at it. I would think that we're looking at that. Because from a worldwide perspective, all ports are looking at it. So I don't imagine why we should be left behind, eh? So that is where we need to go if we don't want to be left behind. So later on, we'll see what they tell us how the port of Hamburg was able to successfully pull this off, eh? We're going to talk about the largest car carrier being built today. You know what they're going to fuel that car carrier by? Ammonia. Why ammonia, you may ask? Because ammonia is not a fossil fuel. Worldwide, ships are now being built with carbon zero emissions in mind. So, car carriers, and that's those big box ships we see coming in Nassau Harbor and go to Arawaki, they let off all those cars. They're very busy worldwide, especially coming out of China, eh? So China is now making car carriers that don't use fossil fuel. They will rely on ammonia to move those ships and operate those ships so that they can be operating carbon zero, eh? Again, a big initiative for carbon emission reduction globally. In Norway, they are making a slew of ships, like 15 ships. Those ships will be utilizing for their propulsion and for their generator power ammonia and hydrogen. Again, zero carbon emissions. So, my dear listener, when I say to you, that the world is moving gradually now, but it will be picked up quite rapidly over the next, well, I'd say by 2030. Most of this will be in place, eh? Definitely by 2040, and by 2050, it wouldn't be an option. You will not be able to use anything that emits carbon in the air, according to the United Nations agreements, unanimous agreement by all countries in the world, eh? So we're looking, the ships are now doing things, the ports are now doing things, the countries are now doing things to get zero carbon emissions. Not, I wouldn't even say by 2050, by 2040. By 2040. And then, of course, if we get past all that tonight, we will move into our global offshore wind capacity. Global offshore wind capacity. And globally, the capacity have now reached 75 gigawatts. 75 gigawatts. And we're going to read the article that tells us what brought them from 60 something to 75. And where they headed. Because by 2040, based on the map that is already in place, the pledges that have been made, and the intent, people now actually coming in and bidding for wind farms for certain countries. Based on all of that, they're up to 75 gigawatts, but they're looking to go up to 1.2 million gigawatts. Because once you reach that, then the world is basically taken care of, eh? So please, be sure to stay tuned as we delve into discussions on these maritime issues. Be warned, people, we are locked and we are loaded with information. So please, don't touch that dial. We're talking maritime, people. You are listening to Maritime Tick, 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 Tick Matters. At this point, we move to our first break, and when we return, we will engage tonight's maritime discussions. Listening people, you do not want to miss this one.
At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Sanders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart. At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection.
Sitting on a darker bay, wasting time. Look like nothing's gonna change. Everything still remains the same. I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I'll remain the same. Sitting here resting my bones, and this loneliness won't leave me alone.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are back with Maritime Matters. Our sponsors for the night show are One-on-One Pharmacy and also Island Care Pharmacy. For all your medication needs, check out my little cousin Shantia McBride and a lovely team at One-on-One Pharmacy in Nassau. Ask for my girl Joy. Once you get in the back there, you let Joy fix you up. Joy know how everything run, man. Whatever you need, headache, backache, toe ache, whatever, honey. Joy tell you what time it is. Fill your prescription at the store or send your refills via the online site, oneononepharmacy.com. 3 locations, East Street South, Charles Sanders Highway, and of course, Explorers Way in downtown Freeport, where you have Island Care Pharmacy. We are secondly sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited. At BMC, we provide a full slate of ISPS maritime security services. Good night, Auntie May! Oh yeah, shout out to my number 1 fan. I say good evening to my Auntie May up there in Freeport. 91 years old and going strong, people. Boy, I tell you, that's my good Auntie May. It is my extreme pleasure, dear listeners, to introduce you to the man behind the controls, our wonderful producer. Ladies and gentlemen, I present you tonight the insatiable, the man of the hour, the man with the power. He is fully able, quite capable, the one and only Mr. Craig Gibson. That's what I'm talking about. Power to the people. You're listening to Maritime Matters, people. On this show, we talk maritime. Maritime Matters airs weekly at 17:05. That's 5:05 p.m. every Tuesday here on Love 97 FM. The primary purpose of our show is to highlight persons that made significant contributions to maritime in the Bahamas and to sensitize Bahamians of opportunities in the maritime sector. Boy, we haven't been doing that for a while, eh? We got plenty of opportunities we need to talk about. We also cover current maritime issues from the domestic and international maritime fields. And of course, tonight we are going international maritime fields. We now open the call-in phone line, dear listeners. So please, feel free to contact us should you want in on this discussion. The number to reach us is 326-8255. Again, the number to reach us is 326-8255. And we are talking Houthis. We are talking large car carriers that are going to be fueled by ammonia. We are talking reduction of carbon emissions as Norway has this big project with 15 ships that will be running off hydrogen and ammonia. And then we're going to talk about the global offshore wind capacity, as it reaches 75 gigawatts and moving on, because we're still in the little early stage as far as we know. So earlier we were discussing the Dwight Eisenhower heading back home, and that's the aircraft carrier Dwight Eisenhower. After 250 in the Med and the Mideast, that's 250 days. That's what, 3/4 of a year? The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower has achieved the mantle of most deployed carrier in the fleet. Okay, so because she was there so long now, she was deployed more than any other U.S. aircraft carrier in the fleet that exists now, And the Navy wants to bring her home, according to a new report. Eisenhower was stationed in the Red Sea to defend shipping interests from attack by Yemen's Houthi rebels. I guess you could call them rebels. But these fellas got a task, The terrorist group claims to have carried out multiple attacks on the carrier itself. And they did hit that carrier. Well, I believe that they did hit that. But you know how hard a carrier is? Do you know how much an aircraft carrier costs in billions? Compared to a regular ship, you pay about $3 billion for the largest cruise ship today. They probably pay about $2.5 to $3 billion for that to be built, So the regular cruise ship could be anywhere between $1 billion and $2 billion, but the very large ones are $3 billion. Do you know what the aircraft carrier being built today? You're looking at 10 times. You're looking at like $30 billion for that one aircraft, and you ain't equipped that yet. You ain't put the planes and all the equipment, because they equip them with all kinds of sonars and radars and they got a whole call the tower, rocket the tower. We got at our airport with the air traffic control tower on those ships, because they got a lot of the fastest planes in the world. Commercial planes can do the kind of speed them F-14 and F-16 and them must do, We ain't talking no little jokey operation. So yeah, the USS Eisenhower is about to return home. So the Houthis say they have made some attacks on the Dwight Eisenhower. But basically the ship is unharmed, eh? The regular exposure to risk has Navy leaders concerned about the need to treat possible post-traumatic stress amongst the crew, according to APY photo and all the rest of them. So an F-A-18 strike fighter takes off from the Dwight Eisenhower. They got a picture with the F-18. Man, this looks so heavily laden. I can't fight no Houthis with that, eh? So Eisenhower and escorts are subject to the same laws of nature as any ship. But yet, they extended their deployment, and they've been there too long, so time to go back home. We are constantly reminding the Department of Defense that we're going to need to take a respite and a break to try and get back to maintenance. And that's another thing about ships. After they bid out this so long, they bring them in and do some major maintenance, eh? Only so much ships can take without being maintained to go back out again. Especially when you're talking about ships like aircraft carrier that have ships leaving that airstrip and returning to that airstrip almost on an ongoing basis. So that's the story, my dear friends, of the Dwight Eisenhower and how she was dealing with those Houthi rebels in the Gulf, the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, basically ashore at Yemen. Now, we got an article here. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim strike on port of Haifa. And again, the port of Haifa is the biggest port of Israel. So, although they are thousands of miles to the south of Israel, they are attacking ships at the port of Haifa. And you know what that means? They're not sending missiles, of course. They unless they have homing missiles, so those really serious nuclear missiles, like what your boy up the road they're trying to make. What's his name up in what that place named North and South Korea. Kim Jong-un or whatever his name is. He's trying to make those weapons that could travel cross continents. That's what they'll need in order to hit Haifa from where they are. And of course, they wouldn't have them. All Houthis can get that. No, man. Little small operation can have that, right? You need big military operations like, of course, the US, Russia, China, the UK. I don't know if any others, but those real military countries with a lot of history. They would have those homing missiles and those missiles that can go intercontinental to do damage. Not the Houthis. So they claim that they made a long-range strike on the port of Haifa. Long-range strike doesn't mean long-range missile. Hundreds of miles from the Houthi-controlled territory in Yemen, right? On Sunday, spokesman, whoever his name is, claimed in a televised address that the group attacked 4 merchant vessels at the port of Haifa for violating the ban on entering the ports of occupied Palestine. In other words, they ban any ship from entering Palestine to carry goods, right? And that's how Israel carried on with this operation. The group opposed Israel's ongoing operation in Gaza, and it has vowed to attack any vessel that call on Israel seaports or have a connection to Israeli ownership. Now, if they could find that you passing Yemen and you in a ship that any Israeli would have ownership as part of, that ship getting attacked. If you on any ship that they think going into Israel to give aid or to carry anything that they could use, that ship to be attacked. So, and that's the reason why a lot of those container ships had to turn the other way. And a lot of cruise ships may have some Israelis on board, so they had to turn the other way because they started to attack them. And that's why they have this thing going on now where hardly any ships, very, very small amount of ships are utilizing the Suez Canal because of the Houthis setting up shop to attack. So they also claim that the group of cattle carrier Short Horn Express in the Mediterranean as it approached Haifa. So even before the ship reached into Haifa, but you can remember now, these terrorist groups and these rebels, they get intelligence just like countries get intelligent on what the ship carrying and where they carrying it, who it for, who owns it, and that type of thing. So they cherry pick who they're going to attack. They don't just attack any ship. They're like the Somalis who just want to make money off any ship they could hold on and bring them in port and hold them for ransom. So the Eastern Mediterranean is far away from the Houthis' area of focus to date. Now remember, they're almost in the Red Sea. So they're not up there in the Mediterranean Sea, eh? The group has concentrated its efforts in the Red Sea, near Houthi-occupied coastline, and in the Gulf of Aden. Its operations are widely believed to be supported by Iranian intelligence vessels operating in these areas, which provide the surveillance and precision targeting information needed to carry out long-range maritime strikes. So again, they're fed with intelligence. May not be the best intelligence around, but that's what they go by. So the Israeli military has not commented on the claims of the strike in Haifa, but a local TV channel in the port city reported on a single air defense missile launch on Sunday morning. So apparently there was a launch out of Israel, air defense. Maybe they went out there to try hit a drone that was wandering around in the area, and that's how they operate like that. So the Houthi movement's escalating attacks on shipping suggest serious challenges ahead for Western efforts to bring the group under control. U.S. forces have been attempting to degrade the group's capabilities for months, both by intercepting Houthi attacks and by striking their Iranian-supplied weapon systems on the ground. Before launch, we got a call? The counter strikes do not appear to have deterred Houthi fighters from their mission. If anything, some Middle East analysts say that the direct military confrontation with the United States has raised the group's popularity and standing in the region. So the Houthis basically have kudos from their regional counterparts. They get respect. Because regionally in that region, the US, Great Britain, and France and those European countries, they're not very, very liked. Because, they've done things over the centuries to kind of take charge of these areas and get a lot of milk out of the honey. A lot of honey and milk. So they developed a level of hatred for Western influence. And so when the Houthis getting away with all of this stuff in the face of the most powerful countries in the world and the most powerful navies and aircraft and ships, these people like to see that, some of them. To say, boy, we really can't. All the power they get, they can't stop these couple of attacks from the Houthis. So their ability to replace whatever we destroy is unimpeded, and our ability to enter this with the USA now, their ability to replace whatever we destroy is unimpeded. In other words, we may destroy 10 of their missile launchers, but then they go right there and replace them. And our ability to interdict material coming into the country is negligible. So because of where they are, come and think of it, Yemen is right on the borderline of one of the world's busiest traffic lanes. So it's almost impossible to stop them from getting stuff. Plus, they could get it from land, eh? Now you remember they're fairly linked with the Middle East. So as long as they have the incentive to continue these attacks, they've demonstrated they have the ability to do it. They have demonstrated. And over the past couple of months, we see in the demonstration by the Houthis, they actually got more ships now going around Africa. You know, that ain't easy to do in this world of shipping, because, you know, there's a lot of money involved. So there you go with the Houthis. We talk about the MSC container ship to use shore power at the port of Hamburg, eh? And again, Hamburg is the largest port in Germany. So what does Sophia tell us? Okay. It says, a month after Hamburg inaugurated its shore power capability of container ships, the Port Authority reports it has signed an agreement with MSC Mediterranean Shipping Company. The container carrier giant will begin using shore power on its container vessels, making it the first shipping line to be using shore power both for its cruise ships and its container ships while they are in port. Hamburg began developing its shore power capabilities more than 2 years ago. It don't happen overnight, eh? You don't snap a finger and, oh yeah, we got power for you. No, not for them big ships. The Hamburg Container Terminal, or CDH, has the first of the major terminals outfitted with the capability which was tested earlier this year and inaugurated with a CMA container ship in May. So the terminal is operated by Eurogate. Hamburg reports it is the first large port in Europe capable of providing shore power for those large container ships. So the plant has 3 connection points, each with output of 7.5 megavolt amperes. Now, I'm an electrician, but I can tell you, I know what they mean, how much power that really is, but 7 megavolt amperes. In other words, it's 7 megavolts. But of course, you can play with the voltage and the amps to get a certain amount of power output. So the electricity used comes 100% from renewable sources. Again, wind and solar. So this is what's going on. The plant was financed in roughly equal parts by free yada 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 yada. The total cost of the plant is around $14 million. $14 million to provide all the power. That don't seem to be too big and too bad, eh? I think that's something we need to look into from our port of Nassau. Because you're going to get that money back when those ships start plugging in, eh? And more. So that's what's going on. And a new shore power system for cruise ships calling at Hamburg went into operation at the cruise center in April of 2024. So the cruise ships, that's MSC, Carnival, Princess Cruises, TUI or TUI Cruises, Fred Olsen deals mainly with them ro-ro passenger ferries, eh? What we used to call it cat back in our days. Phoenix Rise and the Norwegian Cruise Line have also committed to using shore power, so that almost anything coming into the port of Hamburg is going to be plugging in. And that's just one port of the world that has taken the initiative to do this before. By 2030, almost every port will be doing this. Almost every port. And I believe even Nassau. The port of Nassau, where the cruise ships come in, the port of our container port, where all the container ships come in, they'll all be plugging in. Because we can make money off allowing them to plug in and reduce their carbon emission footprints, eh? So that's how we roll it, and that's how we want to roll. Now, we talk about the global offshore wind capacity reaching 75 gigawatts. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who just tuning in, you are listening to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, And we're just talking about some maritime international feeds, where they're talking mainly about the reduction of carbon moving forward before 2040. Earlier we talked about the Houthis and their operation with the Red Sea. We talked about all kind of things. So we got to now continue as we get into our maritime feeds. Global offshore wind capacity reaches 75 gigawatts. So worldwide, the world's total offshore wind capacity has increased by 21% over the last 12 months. So you notice 21%. When you're talking about for the whole world, the wind energy, that's how fast it's growing in 1 year. And as we get nearer to 2030 and then 2040, we will realize that this thing is gonna exponentially frog leap into almost everywhere. They are using solar and wind. So they moved from 61 gigawatts a year ago to 75. So that's 15 gigawatts. You know what's a gigawatt? I'll give an example. BPL needs less than 400 megawatts. Now you need 1 million megawatts to make a gigawatt, eh? BPL works on about less than half of a gigawatt. So when you get one plant giving you 2 gigawatts or 1.5 gigawatt, BPL only need a percentage of that in wind farm capacity for the Bahamas for NASA to no longer need to rely on fossil fuel. Just a percentage of that. So let's read on. China maintains a commanding lead with 36 gigawatts, nearly half of the global total. So what they're talking about is wind farms that are already installed and operational. So around China, they got more than 14 gigawatts of power coming from windmills, eh? Germany is third. Sorry, China's 36. The UK is second with 14 gigawatts. The UK, England. And we think the world ain't moving with renewable energy, so that we moving toward zero carbon emissions by 2040. If we think that, we are really being misinformed, eh? Germany is third with 8 gigawatts. 8 gigawatts, man, these big countries now, they're like us who only need a half a gigawatt to make it work. The Netherlands fourth with 3.7 gigawatts, and Denmark fifth with 2.7 gigawatts. So those European countries are leading the pack, eh? Well, Russia, China's leading the pack. And they followed closely by just 4 European countries. And I don't want you to think the US is being left out. It's just that they getting off the ground and they negotiating and they having a lot of bids for contracts to take care of their wind farms. The report estimates that global operational offshore wind capacity could reach 277 gigawatts by the end of 2030. So we're now at 70, is it 75 gigawatts? And they said we could go to 277 gigawatts by the end of 2030. That's only 5-6 years from now. Let's say 6 years. So that's how fast this thing can be moving, eh? A 4-fold increase. So we got 4 times the amount of windmills out there in 6 years. With countries racing to achieve their net zero emissions goal, wind energy is likely to play a critical role in this transition. And the Bahamas don't really need, we got a call on the line. Call you on Maritime Matters. Thank you so much for calling.
Hey man, how you doing?
Hey, General, boy, your boy radio hanging tough, What's happening up in good old Man Rock?
I heard you talking just now about the Houthis and who they associated with.
Oh yeah, them Houthis.
I'll let you know, they have some of the best intelligence on the earth. But they are associated with Israel, not Israel, with Iran, who is associated with Rocket Man and Russia.
Oh.
Do you know that a lot of the drones that are made, that are fighting in Ukraine right now, are made in Iran. And Iran have all its proxy groups around. And the Houthis is a part of the proxy groups, and they trade between Iran, Russia, and Rocket Man.
You're absolutely right, man. You are well read, my friend. You read on it.
You know who's Rocket Man?
I don't know who's Rocket Man. Who's Rocket Man?
The little short fella, man, 2 inches off the ground.
Oh, you talking about North Korea?
Kim Jong-il.
Kim Jong-un or whatever.
Kim Jong-il.
Kim Jong-un, yeah. That's a Rocket Man?
Yeah, that's Rocket. That's what Donald Trump called it.
Oh. Yeah, I think President Trump went up there to visit him at one point, eh?
Yeah, after Dennis Rodman went over there.
Yeah. Dennis Rodman went there.
But the thing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that is being spurred on by Russia and places like Brazil and the rest of them other countries, because they want to form their own dollar. They want to form BRICS that would be an alternate of trading with and then trading with the American dollar, right? And then we have a treaty that was cut with Saudi Arabia with America that they would always trade in American dollars so that America would have the control of oil. When they're in the price of oil here and there, but you know, right now Saudi Arabia is trying to play two sides of the ball.
Yeah, but Saudi Arabia ain't sure how to get jump because although they're the biggest, you gotta remember now, they're not the biggest ally of the U.S. in the Middle East, but they're the biggest supplier of oil to the U.S. outside of the U.S. itself.
Yes, but the U.S. is the bigger producer of oil and them, you know.
Yeah, I said outside of the U.S. Of course, okay. But the U.S. ain't trying to share that, eh? They keep that for themselves.
Okay, well, let me let you know.
Yeah, man.
Houthis are being closely watched by the 7 to 15,000 member force in the Suez Canal. Every time they shoot a drone, it is being intercepted by American and Israeli and British Air Force or military. They intercept these things and just they spanking the Houthis at the same time. Only thing they're doing is allowing the Houthis to show their face. And they know where the tunnels are, where they got all these ammunition and things hidden. And eventually they will send some bunga busters down there or just attack Iran. You know what I mean? Blow them up.
No, but the
point that's what it looked like, you know what I mean? To stop all this thing about American dollar not being able to be the dollar of the world. It can be a war.
Yeah, but the Houthis ain't have nothing to do with the Houthis have a problem like many other countries in that region with Israel bombarding the Philippines for the Gaza Strip and the West Bank for so long and look like they just want to take it to the next level and don't stop. Well, I mean, of course, the Houthis are also part of because they're backed by Iran. So you got the Houthis, you got the Houthis, you got the Hezbollah, you got Hamas, and they are all, backed by Iran. But the Houthis have been very successful. The USS Dwight Eisenhower and all the other military ships in that area, Denmark and the UK and all them, they have not been able to even slow the Houthis down. Yes, they've been hitting some of their targets.
One more thing. Guess what? Guess who else is backing them up?
Who else is backing them?
The big red star, China.
No, I haven't seen anything in writing.
Yes, sir.
Where you get that?
China want America to be second fiddle.
Yeah, but where you get that information from? Because I see no feeds with China being involved with the Houthis. I only see Iran involved with the Houthis.
Yeah, China ain't showing out like that. China is showing out through Russia and through other allies over in there. You know what I mean? Remember, China right now.
But let's don't say that. Let's don't say that. Let's don't say that unless we could quote that.
And the allies over there is Vietnam with America, the Philippines with America, and a couple of other countries. And China is trying to control the whole seabed. You know, China is the largest country that is signed on to the law of the sea convention for mining the seabed.
Well,
that's even in China do it.
Well, China's a small country when you look at the size of some of those other countries. China have more people than everybody else, but they ain't got much waterways, Well,
the power is in conventions, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? The United Nations Convention, the Convention, the law of the sea, and so for the rest of all them things.
Yeah, but
China, right now, is trying to sink America with one eye closed.
Yeah, but the law of sea deals with territories. The law of sea, China cannot go beyond their territory to do anything under the UNCLOS or the United Nations Convention.
They're doing it, and they acting like there's no law, brother.
No, they're not. That's not true. I can't really get away with that. I know about the UNCLOS now. You ain't gonna tell me but the law of the sea being violated by China, because that's not happening.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What about those countries like the Philippines and all the rest of them countries in the South Pacific that China is building these islands out, these shoals out? They are also terrorizing the fishermen, spouting water on them, running in front of American ships and stuff like that. They are violating. No, they are violating. I'm telling you.
No, but I'm saying to you, you could say many countries violate, right? And we could go back in history and start calling it. There's not many countries with power that you can say didn't do any violations when it comes to those type of things. China is trying to take control of their region. China is...
They are violating because they are walking on other people's territory.
Yeah, but
so that's why I'm telling you, China is in...
That's the only way you can take charge.
A neglect. They're not worried about what the United Nations and the rest of the other countries are saying. Convention are saying. So that's why I tell you, they are violating.
Yeah, but when you're talking about countries taking over other territories, you don't only need to do that by sea, because you look at the countries that the U.S. have taken over, right? Countries that Britain had taken over, countries that Russia would have taken over, countries in France. All of it, this been happening. This been happening all the time.
A lot of the convention came up, but since they made the rules and the regulations, I'm telling you, China is in mass violation of the conventions and the treaties, bro.
I am not saying that they're not.
Okay,
I want you to name the country that is not in violation of those treaties.
Okay, so let's strike a point right there. And then that's what we have to discuss some more, and I have to show you, you have to show me.
We agree to disagree on that. Now, what you saying? The Houthis. What else you got? What else we got to talk about tonight? You see how the world is moving toward carbon zero by way of changing the engines in these ships to stop running on fossil fuel, that the ships can now plug in when they go in certain ports around the world, and those ports are providing energy through renewable energy where they're not emitting any carbon in the atmosphere. So the whole world is now moving toward zero emissions by 2040. Mind you, it's
in the Bahamas.
Yeah, well, the Bahamas.
We get ready to build an LNG plant out to with the fish fires
out Clifton Vale?
Yeah.
Yeah, but why are we going to LNG if we could go straight to solar? Why are we going to LNG? LNG is still fossil fuel.
Yeah.
So why are we going to LNG?
Well, we're doing something better. You know what I mean? We're doing something. You know what I mean? So that, see, let me tell you, with the Bahamas, right? Especially the island like Eleuthera.
Yeah.
The build up and the prosperity has shown the faults of a country with its infrastructure not being fully looked at before you bring in the investment. All that's supposed to work together. Now we're beginning to see.
Well, all that
the electricity, the water, and all the rest of the infrastructure that has supposed to be put down a long time before this thing comes. So I hope in the future that governments look at putting the infrastructure in like how they got in Grand Bahama before they bring the investment.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have to move to that no matter what, right? Because the whole world is moving to water, and if we don't, we're going to find that tankers even ain't bringing around no more fossil fuel. So we'll have to find a way to create energy without fossil fuel.
Yeah.
And we right in the belts of solar. I mean, we're more blessed than many. The reason why those countries are going to wind farms is because those are countries up north but don't see much sun on a yearly basis. So they have to utilize something else. And they, of course, they have stronger wind than us. So wind farm is helping them better than solar would help them. But in our case, we don't really need wind. Although we got a lot of banks, and wind farm is like easy for us.
Well,
but solar's even easier, eh?
Yeah, we got a triple stroke, yeah.
So why we slunking on the solar and fooling around with natural gas, LNG?
I'll tell you one thing, we got a triple stroke, yeah. We got current, we got wind, and we got sun.
Well, we ain't got much current compared to other countries. The sun is the most powerful thing we could use when you talk about
the sun of God. Yes, it is.
Creating a lot of energy in the Bahamas. And all we need is the right type of substation so that when you get the energy, you keep it in the substation, and then you feed it right through the same system you already have in place. And that's all we got to do, But anyway, I'm not a real technical man when it comes to this energy thing. I'm just reading what the world is moving to, eh?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for the call, my brother. You always...
Okay, dear, talk to you later.
Yeah, man. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yep, that's my good boy. You're always on point. Sometimes he may go a little off, but we got to keep him on even keel because he's a old seaman. But yes, he brings up the idea that the Houthis are being backed in full support by Iran. I trying to say a little bit by China, but I see that nowhere. But Iran is in bed with China. Iran is in bed with... In fact, Iran supplied most of the drones to Russia that they were using initially against Ukraine. So yeah, Iran is big business with those drones, those air drones, and as you can see, they now utilizing drones on vessels, small vessels that they make out to look like a fishing vessel, and it's a guided drone basically that goes and explodes and create havoc on ships. So the report estimates, and we now talking about the gigawatts of power coming from wind farms that the world set out to achieve. So the report estimates that global operational offshore wind capacity could reach 277 gigawatts by the end of 2030. And 2030 right there. 2030 is right there, my people. So they're now at 75 and they want to go to 277. And again, that's a 4-fold increase. With countries racing to achieve their net zero emission goal, wind energy is likely to play a critical role in this transition. And remember now, wind energy is really for those countries in the north and in the south, well away from the equator, where they can't rely fully on solar like we can. We don't have to worry about no wind energy when we get solar at the level that we do have it. So the global pipeline of projects at all stages of development, that's the operational stage, the under construction stage, the consented stage, in other words, you already consent, this is what you can do, the planning, or even at an early stage of development, has plateaued this year. And it stands at 1,500 projects, totaling 1,231 gigawatts. So that's 1.25 thousand gigawatts. 1,000 gigawatts, 231. Barely up to 0.2% compared to last year's total. Okay? So last year's total was around the same thing. And it's going to get more and more exponentially as we near that bottleneck of 2030 and 2048. So the industry has stopped its acceleration because of project delays, developers trimming their portfolios, and changes in methods of leasing and consenting projects around the world. And I can tell you the US have gone a couple times into what you call bid packaging. Well, maybe not big, but that's the wrong word. What they call bidding for contracts for wind farm. So China has the largest pipeline of projects. Their projects end up being like 227 gigawatts. And the UK is second with 96 gigawatts. Projects already established, eh? The US is third with, how much that? 94 gigawatts. So the US have almost as much as Britain in the pipeline. Britain have 96 gigawatts, US have 94 gigawatts. Sweden is fourth with 68 gigawatts, and Brazil, capping off the top 5 with 61 gigawatts. You know there's a gigawatt of power coming from windmills? And these big numbers these countries got going on. So it tells us that the world is changing and moving toward that net zero. As the volume of new offshore wind installations is growing, especially in Europe, investments in grid infrastructure have become critical. So you can't have the windmills creating all this energy, but you don't have a grid system to hold it and feed it. So this works in tandem, eh? So in fact, grid integration is ranked as one of the most challenging issues the wind industry faces in both the short term, which is 5 years, and long term, that is more than 10 years. So 5 to 10 is short term, over 10 is long term, eh? As a result, the energy consultancy projects that the demand for offshore substations will become a huge market, especially in Europe. Now, what they talk about is offshore substations. In other words, they don't have to get the power from the windmill and bring it ashore. They're going to have substations out there where the farmers. And that substation will send power ashore already converted. The substations are critical or crucial in the offshore wind industry as they collect power generated by wind turbines and help in transmitting the power to shore. So they take in the actual substation out there and everything happening out to sea, and then when the power comes ashore, it's good to go, eh? At least the voltage will be very high, because of course you got to keep the voltage high in order to keep the current low for transmission. Approximately 137 substations will be installed off continental Europe this decade. This decade meaning 2020 to 2030. So you only got 6 years left, right? And they think about installing 137 substations out to sea, requiring $20 billion in total investment. According to over 120 of these facilities will be installed between 2024 and 2030. 120 over the next 6 years. So 6 divided by 12, that's 20 a year, eh? At a cost of around $18 billion. Offshore substations are particularly beneficial for projects over 200 megawatts in capacity. That sounds like us. Located more than 10 miles from the shore. But of course, we still don't have to worry too much about wind farms. We got plenty solar, as they help minimize power transmission losses. So that's what we're saying, eh? And that's how they can be rolling. And Australia happened to be one of those countries that coming up with some offshore wind farms, eh? So as we get closer to finalizing things tonight, because India got some offshore going on, Norway got some stuff going on with ammonia and hydrogen for ships. We ain't get to all that today, but let's see what Australia's saying. We ain't get no calls, we can keep rolling on. When you all call, like, you stop. Australia declares fourth offshore wind zone as it pushes renewable energy. Well, Australia don't never be left too far behind, especially the English-speaking countries. Eh? We always got like Britain and America leading the way, and Australia and Canada be very close behind. So the Australian government continues to push forward with its efforts to jumpstart the offshore wind energy sector. They declared the fourth wind zone after review process. And this comes as the government of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese launched an aggressive renewable energy program for the country. Australia has a large number of coal-fired energy plants. What is coal? Coal is carbon, eh? Coal is carbon. Coal is when the trees store the carbon in the ground, that is basically turned to coal. So Australia was basically using coal for most of their energy. Coal-fired energy plants. So especially with the energy plants, eh? Like BPL and them. They use coal. They don't even use fossil fuel. They use the coal and power up from that. And now the Albanese government are working to phase out. Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Chris Bowen, points out that the prior government scheduled closure dates for 24 coal-fired plants, which provides 26.7 gigawatts of power. So this section of Australia, to get 26 gigawatts of power, they're using 24 coal plants. Plenty carbon going in there, eh? And they want to phase out 24 of them by 2035, not 2030 now, 2035, because they know 2040 lights out. The country looks to shut down 90% of its coal-fired power stations by 2035. The fourth declared wind zone is in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of New South Wales. So, off of New South Wales, they're going to have a fourth wind farm set up. Based on the consultation program, the government shifted the zone a further 6 miles offshore so that it will not be closer than 12.5 miles. Now, why is that important? Why is it important for the government of Australia to move it from 5.5 miles out, 6 miles further to 12.5 miles out? Further steps were taken in the design to ensure safe management of shipping lane to the port. Because nothing to do with the shipping lane now. This because 12 miles out is beyond territorial limits, eh? So your country law only apply up to 12 miles from your land or your coast. So they will make sure this thing beyond the territory, and I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but obviously this is a move to ensure that's the case. I'll read that piece again. The government shifted the zone a further 6 miles offshore so that it will not be closer than 12.5 miles. So 12 miles is a significant number, and we know that 12 miles is the territorial limits. Declaring this offshore wind zone brings the Illawarra a step closer to becoming a major provider of the building blocks of the net zero transformation, green power, green hydrogen, and green steel, along with thousands of new jobs. A new zone is nearly 400 square miles with the potential to generate an estimated 2.9, that's like 3 gigawatt of power, right? So this one alone is going to be like 3 gigs. I tell you, in the Bahamas, we only need less than half a gigawatt. So Australia much bigger than us. And this 3 gigawatts would be equivalent to the needs of 1.8 million homes. Can you imagine that? And that's only wind farm. They ain't talking no solar. And that type of thing. So as we near to a close, the government is accepting applications for feasible licenses offshore, yada, 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 yada. So they're going through the process. But that is where Australia is going. That is where the US is going. That is where Britain and China already gone and still going, getting there even more faster. And most of the countries in the world are now, leading countries are now moving toward renewable energy as their source of power. Some of them wind energy, some of them solar, some of them a combination. So ladies and gentlemen, that kind of brings our show to a close. And I said earlier, let me just say good night to Annie Mae before she goes to sleep. I know she didn't go to sleep, but Annie Mae, I hope you ain't going to sleep yet. Good night to you, Annie Mae, my number 1 fan. 91 and going strong. My producer, again for the night, Mr. Craig Gibson, the extraordinaire. And our sponsors for the night, as you know, Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, that's us, BMC. We do all forms of ISPS security services. And then we have my good little cousin Shantia running her company. That's the medical field as far as you need your medication. They're medication providers, right? And in Freeport, they got Island Care Pharmacy. And that's downtown, just opposite the Bank of Nova Scotia, that plaza, the Regent Center, eh? And of course, in Nassau, they're on East Street South, and they're on Charles Sanders Highway. And that would be one-on-one pharmacy. One-on-one pharmacy. And hi, Joy, again. Joy's keep me going. But anytime I need a little medication, Joy's fix me up. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I say thank you, dear listener, for continuing to listen to Maritime Matters. You didn't call in tonight, but I hope you got some good feed from those Maritime feeds. Now, next week, we're going to probably do some local stuff. Talk about some y'all know y'all like GAP seed. We talk some GAP seed and do some good stuff. And with that said, as my time ran out, I say to you, good night. I am Captain Glenn Bain. Thank you for listening to Maritime Matters. And as always, Maritime Matters. Tick, 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 out.
I watch him roll away again. Yeah, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide